This book is absolutely terrifying, and while every page in this book is disturbing, there is one page that stands out amongst all of the others as the most frightening. What makes this book so creepy, and what is it about this one page that is so disturbing? Let's find out. The National Library of Sweden in Stockholm houses over 12 million items from books and magazines to maps, sheet music, photographs, films, and more. With such a massive library at their disposal, it's easy to lose track of time when visiting. But even after spending hours browsing the aisles, you might not come across anything too interesting until you stumble upon this ancient book, hidden away on a dark shelf. Not only is this book massive, but its presence feels unnatural, and its origins quite sinister. So how big exactly is this scary book? Well, almost as tall as an average adult and nearly twice as wide. Its imposing presence is immediately striking, but it gets even more unsettling as we turn the brittle yellow pages. This book is known as the Codex Gigas, meaning giant book, and it truly lives up to its name. It was created in the early 13th century and is the largest surviving medieval manuscript in the world. Standing at 92 centimeters tall and weighing 165 pounds, it dwarfs other manuscripts from the period, some of which are no bigger than a piece of paper. But size isn't the only thing that sets this book apart. While most medieval manuscripts were the product of multiple monks working together over several years, the Codex Gigas was astonishingly written by a single scribe who signed his work with the simple moniker, "Here is one man's work." That's pretty chilling considering that. That means this person spent years alone in a room creating this behemoth. So why would someone go through the effort of creating such a large book? There are many theories, but nobody knows for sure. Some believe it was made to impress the church hierarchy, while others think it was meant to intimidate readers. Whatever the reason, the sheer size of the Codex Gigas is awe-inspiring. Its 319 vellum pages contain the complete Latin Bible, making it an invaluable religious text. If you laid all its pages end to end, they would stretch for over 1 kilometer, which is longer than the entire Motala-Strum waterway in Sweden. The Codex Gigas wasn't made in a vacuum. It reflects the intellectual and artistic climate of its time. The High Middle Ages. This period saw a flowering of culture and learning in Europe. Thanks in part to the rediscovery of classical texts, monasteries became centers of scholarship, and monks were often well versed in a variety of subjects. These men of God were not only deeply religious, but also highly skilled scribes and artists. They copied and illuminated manuscripts by the thousands, preserving ancient texts and creating beautiful works of art. Their dedication and craftsmanship helped to shape our understanding of the medieval world. Despite their piety, these monks were not monks in the traditional sense. They didn't spend their days in prayer and contemplation. Instead, they worked tirelessly to produce manuscripts for the church. They were essentially artisans, and their work was highly valued. Manuscripts were expensive to produce, and those who could afford them, such as the church, were willing to pay handsomely for them. In fact, monks sometimes went on strike if they felt that they were not being paid enough for their work. So while the Codex Gigas may seem like a relic of a bygone era, it was actually the product of a highly sophisticated and professional operation. Speaking of relics, let's take a closer look at the Codex Gigas and see how it came into being. The book is named after the giant figures that decorate its first page. These giants represent the Old Testament prophets Isaiah and Ezekiel, and their colossal forms set the tone for the rest of the book. Throughout its 319 pages, the Codex Gigas contains over 2,600 verses from the Latin Vulgate, which is the most important version of the Bible in the history of Western Christianity. The Latin Vulgate is the translation of the Christian scriptures into Latin by Saint Jerome in the 4th century. It is based on earlier translations and Jerome's own readings of the Hebrew Bible. While the Vulgate had been translated into other languages before, the Codex Gigas is the only surviving example of a fully Latin Bible from the 13th century. This makes it an incredibly valuable resource for historians and theologians alike. The Codex Gigas was likely created in France or the Netherlands, given that the script used throughout the book is found primarily in those areas during the 13th century. The script is known as insular, minuscule, and it's characterized by its elaborate lettering. Insular, minuscule was used to write important documents during the medieval period, and it was often decorated with colorful illustrations. It's unclear who commissioned the Codex Gigas, but it was likely intended for use in a monastery or cathedral. Once completed, the book would have been used for both religious services and private study. Now, despite its age, the Codex Gigas is in remarkably good condition. It was probably kept in a safe place, since it was finished around 1295, possibly in a French monastery. It remained there until 1862, when it was purchased by King Oscar I of Sweden. He donated the book to the Royal Library of Sweden, where it is still kept today. While the Codex Gigas is undoubtedly a masterpiece of medieval art and literature, it's also a bit of a mystery. We don't know much about its creation or its purpose, but that only adds to its allure. The book is truly a window into the past, offering us a glimpse of a time when manuscripts were prized possessions and monks were both scholars and artists. It's also a reminder of the incredible skill and dedication of the people who created it. But this raises another question. How did they do it? How did they manage to write such a long book by hand without any fancy technology? The answer, as it turns out, is hard work and expertise. Writing in the Middle Ages was not for the faint of heart. It required skill in writing, painting, chemistry, and more. Scribes were often monks who had dedicated their lives to the pursuit of knowledge. They were trained for years in the art of writing, and they were expected to produce high-quality work. But even with training, writing was a laborious process. Scribes' tools weren't much more advanced than a pen and ink, and they had to mix their own paints. They also had to be familiar with the works they were copying, and they were expected to make corrections if necessary. But perhaps the most important quality of a scribe was his patience. Writing by hand can be tedious, but in the Middle Ages, it was even more so. Scribes' hands would cramp up from the repetitive motions, and they would often have to take breaks. But mistakes were costly, so scribes had to be careful. If they made a mistake, they could not simply erase it and start again. They had to use a special type of sponge to remove the ink and then carefully rewrite the passage. It was a painstaking process, but the results were often stunning. Medieval manuscripts are renowned for their beauty and accuracy, and that's because scribes took pride in their work. They were, after all, creating works of art, and they wanted them to be as perfect as possible. Unfortunately, not much is known about the life of the scribe who wrote the Codex Gigas. We don't know his name or where he was from, but we do know that he was a master of his craft. His handwriting is beautiful, and his attention to detail is astounding. He took great care to write each letter perfectly, and he even added decorative flourishes here and there. It's clear that he was proud of his work, and rightly so. The Codex Gigas is a testament to his skill, and it is one of the finest examples of medieval calligraphy in existence. So while we may never know much about the scribe himself, we can marvel at his handiwork and appreciate the artistry of the Codex Gigas. It is a masterpiece of medieval art and literature, and it is one of the most important books in the world. But it's also a bit of a mystery, and that only adds to its allure. The book is truly a window into the past, offering us a glimpse of a time when manuscripts were prized possessions and monks were both scholars and artists. It's also a reminder of the incredible skill and dedication of the people who created it. The scribe who wrote the Codex Gigas was a master of his craft, and his work is a testament to his talent. But what do you think? What is it about the Codex Gigas that you find so fascinating? Let me know in the comments below. And while you're at it, be sure to subscribe for more videos like this one. Thanks for watching.